you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today it's going to be the update to the burn build, the Magicka Dragonknight for the Dragonhold DLC. Now I know there's been a lot of changes recently, especially with damage over time, which we are obviously built for. The Dragonknight excels at damage over time, and of course cost as well. A lot of skills, especially AoE type skills or damage over time in general, did go up in cost. So now you can't really spam so much, and you have to work a little bit harder for your sustain. But that's part of the game design anyway. You're not necessarily supposed to have a bar infinite sustain, but you can build for it if you want. But it's a balance thing. Sometimes you have to go less damage and more recovery, sometimes more damage and less recovery. It depends on your build. But don't worry, we've got that all covered. This particular build is viable for all content. It's absolutely fine for everything across the board. And you don't have to have trial gear if you don't want to, or if you don't have access to it yet. You can actually do very, very well with all base game or dungeon gear. So, first of all, we're going to go into the stats. Make sure we've got some buffs on, got a potion on. We're on 36.7k max Magicka, 15.4k max health, and 10k max stamina. Don't worry about the health, there are some options for that. Our recovery is 1.4k, our spell damage is way over 4k, especially buff. We almost cracked 5k, but it's not showing in our stats right now. And 57.4% crit chance. The crit chance can go up with buffs, the spell damage will go up with our actual setup and with buffs applied as well. And our resistances, although they're on 14.7 and 9.6, can actually go up if you choose to put a resistance buff on, or if perhaps you have a warden in your group giving you major resolve or major ward. That one's got changed. It still does the same thing, but it's got one name now instead of two. But anyway, a resistance buff across the board can actually help you if someone else has one with them. 64 points into max Magicka. We are of course using the Shadow Moonstone. We're a stage 4 vampire, although you can change this if you choose to. And we're using the clockwork food, which can be changed. If you choose to change your food, instead of using the recovery stuff, you can use Disastrous Bloody Mara, or you can use the flat max health, max magic food. They both are flat health and magic, but one of them does have a health recovery bonus with a little bit less flat stats. So the choice is really yours. If you want the tiny bit of health recovery, which won't be massively different for us because we're a vampire anyway, you can choose this. But if you want higher flat stats, you can use this one. Just bear in mind your sustain will suffer because we won't have the increased recovery that you get from this food. However, the safety side of it is that your health, instead of sitting on 15.4, is now on 18k with 39k Magicka, which is really, really nice. So if you're in a situation where you've got so much sustain, you don't need recovery food, you can buff up your flat stats a bit with this stuff. But if you are struggling for sustain, of course, then you can just stick to this stuff. And you may want to put a health glyph on your chest, your legs, or your head. Just one of them will be fine. You can put it on multiple if you want, but just one health glyph on one of your big pieces will put you over 16k and you'll be absolutely fine. However, the choice is yours. Now, I'm going to go into the skills in detail. If you skip this, of course, it's entirely up to you. But if you miss information that is in the video and you ask it in the comment section below, I won't be wasting my time or yours repeating myself. So just bear that in mind, it is at your own risk. First up is Burning Embers. Very simply put, Ardent Flame skill line. Second ability you unlock starts off as Searing Strike, morph it to Burning Embers. For the magical morph, this did get increased in cost, but so did the duration. This lasts 14 seconds. It's a single target damage over time in the form of flame damage. Very simple. You have to be in melee range for this because you can't use it at long range, obviously. Mag DK is good up close. That is on a target for 14 seconds. Every 2 seconds it will deal fire damage, and when the effect ends, you will heal for 75% of the total damage inflicted. So, this works in 3 different scenarios. If the target dies, if the ability runs out, or if you apply a fresh ability, the old one will count as gone. So, that will also give you a heal. So basically, while it's running, at any point in time you can recast it if you really have to and take a heal. The longer it's been running, the bigger the heal. Just bear in mind, however, that cannot crit. It used to, can't anymore. It was way, way too strong, so they've upped the cost and made it so it can't crit anymore, and it's just based off of the damage done, not damage done plus crit values applied. Next up is Engulfing Flames. Obviously you want to keep that on the target at all times, unless you have to reapply it, in which case you've got a new one anyway. Next up is Engulfing Flames. Anyway, third ability you unlock starts off as Fiery Breath, morph into Engulfing Flames. Very, very simple. You breathe fire in area of effect in front of you, and that also lasts for 14 seconds. So again, do not spam these abilities if you can help it. They are durated. Don't spam them. The The only time you need to reapply this is if you really want a heal. Apart from that, leave it running, let it run off, put a new one on. Or keep up your uptimes, whatever. This doesn't just apply damage over time, however. While this is active, any targets affected by this will have increased flame damage done to them from you, your group. Whoever is hitting it with fire damage will have increased damage. Now, that counts for skills and proc sets. So just bear that in mind. However, this current value, as you can see at the moment, is actually an 8% increase, not 10. That is because this is scaled off of spell damage. You need to have over 3k spell damage to get the full 10%. So let's put our spell damage on and just revisit that skill. As you can see, all we've got to do is keep our buffs up and our bonuses, and we're good. Very, very simple to do. Just keep your rotation up. If it drops, everyone else is going to have lesser damage. This is why on tanks this is not that effective anymore, because before it used to give you a 10% bonus flat out. Now it's based on your spell damage alone. 300 spell damage per 1%. So just bear that in mind. You need 3k or more to make this max out. Next up is Harness Magicka. This is in our light armor skill line. This, you will need 5 pieces of light armor worn in order to activate or use the skill. Starts off as annulment, morph it to Harness Magicka. Very simple. This will put a damage shield on you and protect you from damage. Your resistances do contribute towards this as well, so obviously the higher your resistances, the better. And this does scale off of your max health, so again, the higher your health, the better. It does technically scale off of your max magicka, so the higher it is, the higher it can go, but it stops on your health scaling. So this will only go as high as 50% of your maximum health. So at the moment, it will only give us a 7.5k shield. If you've got 20k health, it will give you a 10k shield, if you've got enough magicka to push it that high. But let's just basically say, for argument's sake, they can't go any higher than that. Now, if you're using different food, like I explained at the beginning, that will give you a bigger damage shield, of course, because the magicka is pushing it up, and your midway point for your health bar is higher. Only use that when you need to. Also note, if you do take damage from magic abilities, you will actually gain back a small amount of resources based on the amount of light pieces you're actually wearing. And this can happen 3 times as long as the shield persists, and it lasts for 6 seconds. If it takes it off straight away, then of course you'll get 1 bonus of restore magicka back, and the shield will be gone. Unrelenting Grip is very important. Ardent Flame skill line again. 4th ability to unlock. Starts off as Fiery Grip, morph it to Unrelenting Grip. Now this technically is a CC ability. So, what you do is you activate it and you pull the target to you. Lots of tanks like to use that because it's very helpful positioning things at your feet. But, 2 things. 1, this is very good utility because if you aim at something, you'll pull it in and everyone's happy anyway. That saves a tanker cast, and it's where you need it because you hit close range. So that's perfect. But also, this does damage on single target and is technically free depending on the situation. So what this does is it does initial fire damage when it hits, and it pulls the target to you. But if it cannot be pulled, if it is currently CC'd, so it's been stunned or immobilized or something like that, you can't pull it in. If it is immune to CC effects, so it's a boss, they can't be pulled in. Any situation, basically, that will prevent you from moving the target from its current position due to effects, this will give you 100% of the cost back. So, when this target here, we'll just imagine he's a boss, cannot be chained, watch my bar. Costs, get it back. Costs, get it back. Our spammable is free. Now, the next ability, yes, does more damage flat out, but we're going to use a combination of them. And there's a very good reason for it, and that will make more sense when we get to the rotation. But the next up is Molten Whip. This is also in the Ardent Flame skill line. First ability to unlock starts off as Lava Whip. This will do single target damage, just like this does, but obviously higher. And if you strike an enemy while they're immobilized or stunned, you will actually set them off balance. So anything that is CC'd, you actually get benefit from it, and everyone else can take advantage of that. Also, while slotted, when you activate a different Ardent Flame ability, you gain a stack of Seething Fury, which basically gives you 75 spell damage. This will stack up to 3 times, so each Ardent Flame ability you use that is not this skill will give you that bonus. So you'll have a higher spell damage, which means all of your damage goes up. But if you activate the whip, it will remove the Seething Fury, and it will make your Molten Whip do more damage. But they stack up to 3 times, so you must get 3 stacks to get the maximum spell damage before you can get the really strong whip. So this is how it looks normally. Just doing normal hits. And if we stack up Seething Fury, 2, 3, because that's an Ardent Flame ability, we do a backflip. And it hits a lot harder. Our front bar rotation actually gives us 1, 2, 3 abilities, backflip. Very, very simple. And this spammable can make us backflip. That is all in the rotation. Our really strong skill is being buffed by a free, lesser damage spammable every single time. Instead of spamming this for a lesser amount and running out of juice. It's very, very important to note. This is stronger flat out, but it's incredibly hard to sustain if you're just spamming it. But the way that we've made this happen, having these free chains to proc our Seething Fury and get the free whip, or not the free whip, the stronger one even, makes a big, big difference. Again, that will make a lot more sense in our rotation, but just remember that spell damage is going to be pushing these dots as well. So while we're building up the spell damage for Seething Fury, ready to take it all away again for the big whip, we are buffing the rest of our damage because it's flat spell damage. Next up is Shooting Star. This is not used for anything other than passives, or as an oh shit moment if we've got not enough ultimate to fire off the back one. That will make more sense in the passives, but we're using Shooting Star, which is Meteor to start with. In the Major Guild skill line, you need Major Guild level 10 for this. If you don't have this, don't worry, you can just put on any ultimate you like. I tend to favor the one from the Earth and Heart skill line, which is actually Magma Armor morphed to Magma Shell, because it's a very strong protective buff, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I just put that there generally as an oh shit button as well while I'm farming for Mage's Guild if I don't already have it. But if you do have it, you want Shooting Star because there are some passives there. Just bear in mind, of course, if you do use Shooting Star in a really, really tight situation and you have to fire this, you will get ultimate back for each enemy hit. So it's really, really handy. Again, just for stats for the most of the time. Molten Whip is on our back bar as well. There's a very good reason for that. It's not touched. We hit it on the front bar, we don't hit it on the back bar. The reason it's on the back bar is so that we can stack up other Ardent Flame abilities that will give us spell damage ready for the big whip on the front bar. We have other abilities here that will fire it, but you can't maintain the spell damage bonus if you don't have it on both bars. It will eventually fall off. So what you need to do is keep up Ardent Flame abilities and have it on both bars so it never falls off, so you can control this. Again, in the rotation, that will make more sense. Next is Unstable Wall of Elements. You can use the Elemental Blockade if you prefer, but this one did actually top out a bit, especially if your rotation's good. This is in the Destruction Staff skill line. Second ability to unlock starts off as Wall of Elements, morph it to Elemental Blockade if you want the longer duration, or Unstable Wall of Elements if you want the extra damage. Now, this does last longer than it did before. It used to last 8 seconds. A very long time ago, it used to last 6. But 10 seconds is now perfect for our rotation. And the other morph is 14 seconds. So although the other one is better for longer durations, it turned out that we had to do way too much on the back bar before we went to the front. It was a little bit uncomfortable. So this was much, much easier for us to use. And just bear in mind, of course, because we're using the Flame Staff, this does change it. Instead of it having the flat magic damage and all that good stuff, this does actually have flame damage, of course. It explodes after it ends and does damage every 1 second, but enemies caught inside of here taking burn-in status effect damage will actually have this ability hit them for 20% stronger. So it's very important that you have high uptime on your burn-in status effects, and you'll notice later on when I get some more details about that we have very high burning status effect. It's very beneficial to us. It does damage to the target, and of course it does a massive overall amount aside from our skills themselves. Next up is, of course, Barbed Trap. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. 5th ability to unlock, starts off as Trap, Beast Morph it to Barbed Trap. I would not recommend using the Sigic Order skill for this because your sustain will suffer heavily. The skills did get increased cost-wise, and it will make a big, big difference. This is absolutely fine for us. We are in melee range anyway, so we can always place this. Now, what you need to do is very simple. Put this on the ground. Anyone caught inside of that will be immobilized, if they can be, and they'll take damage over 18 seconds in a form of physical damage, by the way. So it's not much for us, but it does do damage. Now, what this does above all is it will give us Minor Force, increasing any critical damage that we do by 10%. This is a very important buff to keep up. Always apply this every rotation. Now, there are some skills that we don't apply every rotation. They have a similar duration. We can afford for those ones to fall off very slightly, but we don't want this to fall off ever. So always reapply it every rotation. Next up is Flames of Oblivion. Again, Ardent Flame. We're using the entire skill line, by the way. Flames of Oblivion is the 5th ability you unlock. Starts off as Inferno, morph it to Flames of Oblivion. Now, this will actually hit with a fireball once every 5 seconds to your closest target, but it can hit up to 2 enemies, depending on whether you have more than one in the fight. The closest 2. Now, while started, this will give you Major Prophecy and Major Savagery, increasing your spell and weapon crit ratings of 10%. Don't know why it still says 2191. They've never changed that. Hopefully one day they will. But this also scales off of your highest offensive stat. So if you have really high stamina, scales off of stamina. If you have really high magicka, scales off of magicka. Obviously, we're speccing into magic, so this was going to give us more towards that. And this does fire damage. Everything that we're doing so far, except for Beast Trap, is all fire damage. Even the chains, it's all fire damage. Keep this in your rotation all the time, and make sure every rotation you cast this. Now, we'll use every single Ardent Flame ability, by the way. So if anyone wants to ever scream class identity, we are using all class abilities apart from a Beast Trap and a Wall from the Destro skills. Now, next up is, of course, Eruption from the Earth and Heart skill line. 5th ability unlocks. You are going to want a couple of these on your bar while you're leveling. Starts off as Ash Cloud, morph it to Eruption. You don't want the other morph because that's a heal. This will actually put a damage over time on the ground. And enemies will take damage every 1 second for 18 seconds. Oh, by the way, the fireball, which you may or may not have seen earlier, is this. As you can see, my eyes are glowing because that does contribute to Seething Fury. Anyway, this is a damage over time on the ground, which should be lined up with this. So you want both of these down at the same time. Very simple. This one is Unstable Wall of Elements. This one is Eruption. However, Unstable Wall of Elements you fire every rotation. Eruption, you fire every second rotation because it lasts a very long period of time. This does flame damage, and it does an initial hit as well. And it also fires off our Earth and Heart passives, but we will get to those in a moment. This does last 18 seconds, so does this. This we can't afford to run off. This one we can get away with. So this will fall off for a couple of seconds in your rotation, but make sure you do apply it every second. This, we don't want to lose the bonus ever, so always apply it every rotation, as with this one as well. That, again, will make more sense when we get to the rotation itself. Standard of Might, Ardent Flame again. Surprise, surprise. Every single skill. Dragonknight Standard starts off as morph it to Standard of Might. This is very, very simple. While standing inside of this, you take 15% less damage and do 15% more damage. You'll do damage over time in the form of flame damage as well every 1 second to all enemies inside of it. Your teammates can take a synergy which will shackle them to the ground and do flame damage in area of effect. And you want to use this very carefully. What I mean by that is, instead of just running in and dropping a blank banner, like that, tick-tock, the time is running, counting down from 20 seconds, you're doing nothing apart from flame damage from the skill, you should already have skills running. If they're already running, the damage already ticking over will instantly get boosted by the banner, then you can continue your rotation and reapply stuff as and when you need to. Do not fire a banner on its own. I've seen lots of people run into a fight, go, oh, we're going to kill the boss, boom, drop a banner. No. Drop your skills first, then drop a banner. That also helps towards your sustain for the passives, which I am now going to get to. Ardent Flame, of course, we're using every single one of these, so make sure you get these passives. This will increase your damage and burning and poison status effects by 50%. Burning status effects can be applied by doing fire damage. It's luck, but if you do apply a burning status effect, you will do a damage over time effect on the target. This is stronger for the Dragonknight by 50%. Also, when applying a burning status effect, when you apply a brand new one, you will get back 500 magicka. No cooldown whatsoever. Every single time you apply a burning status effect, and it's a fresh one, you will get 500 magicka back. Now, on a single target, that's actually very, very handy, especially since we're using nothing but fire. But in area of effect, that is disgusting, because you can apply it to multiple targets, and there is no cooldown. Now, if you hit multiple targets with burning status effects, you can see several of them are on actual fire. Each one of those gave me 500 magicka back straight away for being burning. Now, any new burning status effects will do the same. So he gave me 500 back, so did he. That one that just lit up there, he did it as well. And another one. It's very hard to run out in AoE situations, so just bear that in mind. Very, very strong passive. This, when you deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, which we will, you'll reduce the enemy's movement speed. That's not massively essential, but take it anyway. It helps to kind of slow stuff down. Increase the damage over time of your Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, and Dragonknight standard abilities by 33% and the duration by 4 seconds. So, your Burning Embers, your Engulfing Flames, and your Banner all have 4-second increase. So instead of 16, 10, and 10, it's actually 14 and 20. And they all have higher damage output. So it's very, very nice. This will increase the damage of your Flame, Area of Effect abilities. So our Breath and our Banner, our Wall of Elements, and our Eruption are all affected. Draconic Power, of course. This increases the amount of damage you can block. While a Draconic Power ability is active, your Hidden Receives increase by 12%. So if we do have any of these abilities on, that will improve it, but we don't actually have one at the moment. This will increase your health recovery for each ability slotted of this skill line, which is not important, but it does increase the range of your melee attacks. So our Burning Embers, for example, should have 5 meters, but it's actually got 7. So that's actually quite important, so make sure you do get that. This increases your spell resistance as well by 3300. As you noted at the beginning, I'm sure our spell resistance is higher than our physical. That is because of this passive. Earth and Heart is very, very important. Increase the duration of Earth and Heart abilities. So, of course, if you use Magma Shell or Eruption, which we are using Eruption, the duration is longer. If you use an ultimate, you get 46 of everything back for each point of the ultimate cost. This is why we use this one here. Not because only this is the most powerful one we have, but also because we get so many resources back due to its cost. It's the most expensive ultimate we've got. Use this one all the time, you get loads of resources back. Remember a moment ago I explained about not dropping a blank banner? If you have full resources and you drop this, you get 46 times 250 back, but you're already full. Now you're going to use loads of resources and you have to wait for another banner before you can do that again. Don't do that. Spend resources first, then get them back. When you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you and your group gain Minor Brutality. This is in our rotation once every second rotation. This is Earth and Heart ability. This gives everybody Minor Brutality. You increase the damage output of Stamina DPS with this skill, and you increase the damage output of any Flame-based DPS with this skill. We are actually buffing the group with our rotation by default. Very, very handy indeed. And also if you're in combat, with a minimum of a 6-second gap, each time you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you actually get 3 ultimate back. So in our rotation, when we do apply that skill, we will get this back. And also, you gain stamina. If you use an Earth and Heart ability, you get 990 stamina back. Of course, we're using Beast Trap, which costs stamina. We do want to block and all that good stuff as well. So how do we manage our sustain? Well, this ability here gives it back. We are using just the destruction stuff, of course, 1 on each bar. Each one of these are very, very important. Make sure you get them as soon as possible. Heavy attacks from Flame Staves will do 12% more damage than they usually would from any other staff. That is actually quite important because you may need to heavy attack occasionally inside mechanics depending on how your sustain is. Should be good, but some enemies drain, or you might be over the top spamming with your rotation and lost your train of thought. Your heavy attacks will be important to you. This will increase their damage. This will ignore 10% of the enemy's resistances from your Wall of Elements, your lights, and heavy attacks. This will increase your chance of applying Burning, Concussion, and Chilled status effects by 100% of the base chance. So this will actually heighten our ability to apply that Burning status effect and get more sustain back, and of course do more damage. This will increase all single target abilities by 8%. So your Chains, your Burning Embers, your Molten Whip, your Flames of Oblivion as well. This all contributes towards this passive. Very, very handy indeed, so make sure you get it. And this one, when you kill an enemy with a Destruction Staff ability, so light, heavy, or Wall of Elements, you'll actually get 3,600 Magicka back. We are using 5 light pieces of armor, 1 medium, and 1 heavy. If you want to, you can use 7 light, or you can use 6 light and 1 heavy, depending on how you want to mess with your attributes. But you will want 5 pieces of light minimum, otherwise you can't get the passives for everything. This will reduce the effectiveness of snares applied to you and reduce the cost of sprinting. We don't have a lot of room for maneuverability as a Magicka build, so this does help. This will increase your mag recovery and reduce the cost of your abilities by 10%. Just remember, of course, if you have more pieces of light, so you go up to 7, this will actually increase that further. This will increase your spell resistance for each piece worn. This requires 5 pieces, increases your spell crit rating. And this requires 5 and increases your spell penetration by 4,884, which is huge. Medium armor, of course, you don't need all of these, but a couple of them do help. This will increase your weapon crit. You don't really need that, but we've got savagery anyway, and we are using 1 weapon-based ability or 1 physical-based ability, so this will actually make this crit occasionally. It's not huge, but it can help, so you can get that if you want. This will increase your stam recovery and reduction to cost, so Beast Trap is cheaper and your recovery is higher, so that will help. And this will increase your movement speed if you sprint for the One Piece one and reduce the dodge roll cost. So these are actually quite beneficial, but you don't need agility, and the sneaking one is up to you. Heavy armor, of course, you just need the first 3. This will increase your physical and spell resistance for One Piece 1. This will increase your health recovery and return of resources when you actually take damage. And this will increase your maximum health. They're small bonuses, but they do count. We are, of course, a stage 4 vampire, so we want this one here. Stage 2 or higher will give you increased mag and stam recovery, and stage 3 or higher will give you a 33% reduction to damage at maximum while you're under 50% health. So the lower health you go, the less damage you take. Now you can go stage 4 if you want to use the sneaky passive, which I tend to do pretty much all the time. I do like having these passives. I don't struggle in any content as a stage 4 vampire, but if you are scared of stage 4 or stage 3 or whatever, just bear in mind what you'll lose if you do take some of these bonuses off. It's entirely up to you, however. Fighters Guild, of course, you will need these. This will reduce the cost of your Beast Trap, so make sure you get this. This will increase your weapon damage for each ability of this skill line slotted. Again, it's a tiny bonus. You can get this if you want, but it's not going to make a huge difference. But if you want to, you can take this passive. But you will need this next one. This will increase your ulti regen, basically, for killing stuff. So if you kill undead, Daedra, or werewolves, you, for getting the kill and blow, will get 9 ultimate back. Remember, of course, if you use your ultimate, you'll get your ultimate cost back 46 times in all resources, health, magic, and stamina. So, the faster you can generate ultimate, the more often you can use this, and of course, the more sustain you have, and the more damage you do. Very important indeed. Undaunted, of course, is very important. Get every single synergy you can get your hands on. Every single synergy you pick up will be beneficial to you. It will do damage to the enemy, it will heal you, give you a damage shield, give you a buff, whatever. There's loads and loads of synergies in the game. So many to take. Every single one that you do take will put you on a 20-second cooldown for that ability anyway, which means other people can take the next one. But for taking any synergy in the game, you will, of course, get 4% all of your resources back. This, of course, is very important. We are using 1 heavy, 1 medium, and 5 light, which means for the 3 different types of armor that we're wearing, we get a stacking bonus for our max resources. So we've got a total of 6% maximum stamina, maximum magic, and maximum health increase. If you do use different weights, that is entirely up to you. But just bear in mind, if you don't have 3 different types, you will drop 2% for each type you take off. So if you do go 7 light, you will lose medium passives, armor passives for the heavy armor passives, and you will also lose 4% across the board for this. So bear in mind, whatever way you go around it, depending on what way you're more comfortable with, depends on how strong this buff is. We are no longer a cat. Yes, the Khajiit is still very strong, and always has been, and always will be, but the High Elf in this particular update did outperform. Previously, we had very good strength to dots and all that kind of stuff. We still do, but because they were reduced so dramatically, the difference between the 2 races was apparent. There was about a 4k drop from the Khajiit to the High Elf, but it's still very good, very sustainable. You can choose it if you want to, but we are now using the High Elf. This is a very important skill, or passive even. When you activate a class ability, you restore 640 magical or stamina, whichever one of the 2 is lowest, once every 6 seconds. Now this is important. So we use a Beast Trap, and it costs us stamina. Just make sure we're blocking so we don't get any stam back. Now if I use a class ability, you'll notice I got stamina back then. And that wasn't Earth and Heart. As long as you use a class ability that costs magic, you will get stamina back. And then you can stack up with your Earth and Heart as well. So that's actually quite helpful for our stam sustain, for our blocks, dodge rolls, and all that good stuff, and maintaining a Beast Trap. This will increase your maximum Magicka by 2k, and this will increase your spell damage by 258. So instead of high crit damage, we have higher flat damage, which actually works out quite nice, because remember, if you do high crit damage and you've got a really low base to it, you can actually underperform versus something that's got higher stats and lower crit damage. It depends on how you build your character. Alchemy is very important. Medicinal use, of course, is the most important passive in the game, in my opinion. If you have this passive, your potions will last 30% longer, which means our spell pots that we are using will actually last 47 seconds, not 36. So here's a tip, by the way, for potion users. Always use them. They have buffs on them. They are consumable buffs. You don't want your buffs to run out, do you? So make sure that as soon as it's grayed out, obviously you keep an eye on it, and as soon as it's ready again, you pop it. Now, of course, we're going to go into the gear. This is very, very important because some people are worried. You don't have to be. Burn and Spell Weave on the front bar. The Flame Staff can be gotten from City of Ash, 1 or 2. I have seen lots of people do chest runs for this particular dungeon on normal, running around, looting chests and then leaving again. Kill everything. This can drop from the last boss, this can drop from chests, this can drop from trash. I've seen it drop in the first trash pool several times, unfortunately at a lower level, but it does. Now, you want it imprecise, and what this does, this will give you max magic, spell damage, and spell crit. And when you deal damage with a flame ability, you have a 15% chance to apply burn and status effect to the enemy and increase your spell damage by 5 to 5 for 8 seconds. And this has a 12-second cooldown, starting from the initial activation. So there's a 4-second gap at most, minimum, sorry. So, what do you need to do to apply this? We need a burn and status effect from the flame. And there it is. 525 spell damage, just like that. All you have to do is keep your damage up. Now, the reason it's on the front bar is because when we swap to the back, it'll still stay with us as long as it's active. But if it fired on the back, and we were there for, say, 4 seconds, and we went to the front, we've only got 4 seconds left of it. We want it to fire on the front when it's doing damage, so we can get a longer duration on the front bar when we're doing more damage. We don't do as much on the back as we do on the front, because that's where our main spammables are. Now, you want the staff, of course, on the front bar, and then you can have the last 3 pieces in any order you like. You can have them on the body, you can have them on the jewelry, you can have a mixture of the two, but you must only have this on the front bar. The back bar, you want to have the Maelstrom Inferno staff, or, if you don't have access to this, a willpower or crafted one will do fine for now. Willpower is probably the better option because it's got a very high mag bonus, and that will keep your damage up a little bit when you're on the back bar. You want it to be infused on purpose, and you want a flame glyph on it for the extra flame damage, obviously, during your rotation. The infused part of this, during Wall of Elements, will literally fire this every time it's off cooldown because of the enchant bonus itself, as long as your wall is kept up. Weapon-based area of effect skills keep your abilities proccing so long as the ability is running. Now, if you are struggling with your sustain, which you shouldn't be, but you might be, you can change this, of course, for a Magicka glyph instead. So you can, I haven't got any on me, but you can change it, which will do magic damage, which is lesser than this, but it will give you magic back. So every 2 seconds or so, you'll actually get about 300-400 magic back. It's quite handy. Now, the set we're using, of course, on the body is actually Destruction Mastery, as we've had on this build for almost 2 years now, I think. This is from Dragonstar Arena, just like the Burn and Spellweave staff. You don't have to do it on Veteran. You can go into Dragonstar Arena on normal and just upgrade the quality of the gear. Very simple. This is a very flat set. This gives you max magicka, spell crit, spell damage, exactly the same as Burn and Spellweave, in fact, in the 2, 3, and 4 piece bonuses. But the last bonus is this will give you a 2.4k mag bonus while you have Destruction Staff equipped. And we can't ever lose this buff because we have 2. Very simple. Really, really easy to get hold of. You can buy it on the market as well if you really want to. The rings for Burn and Spellweave do actually drop as a named drop as well, so they're quite easy to get. The only one you might have trouble with is the staff, because let's face it, RNG is a thing in this game, and sometimes you don't always get what you want. But it is an element of luck, nothing else. It doesn't make a difference what difficulty you put the content in. Just make sure you kill everything, loot everything, hopefully you'll get it. Now, the monster helmet and shoulders we're using, 1 heavy, 1 medium. You can change the weight if you want. We're actually using Zaan for more single target. In most cases, not all. This will give us a crit bonus, and for doing light or heavy attack damage, we can actually have a 20% chance to do a long flame breath type effect for 5 seconds, and every 1 second it will get stronger by 50% of the previous tick. Now, you have to be within 8 meters, so if you move too far away, it will fall off, and it has an 18-second cooldown, so this can actually be up for 5 and down for 13. And because it's chance-based, of course, off your lights and heavies, if you misweave and you don't light and heavy as much as you should be, you can have a lesser uptime on this. And even if you do get it right, you can still have a lesser uptime. This can be a little bit tetchy. Sometimes it procs, sometimes it doesn't. It's just a matter of luck. Grofdar is the other option, however. Much, much easier dungeon. Much, much easier to get hold of. Gives you a max magic bonus as well. And when you deal any damage, not just lights and heavies, every single tick of your damage over time effects can fire this, and it'll put a circle of flame around you, doing damage in area of effect every 1 second for 5 seconds, 5 seconds downtime. So it can fire for 5, down for 5, up for 5 again. This one actually does perform very, very close to Xyn. There are very few occasions where Xyn actually fires really, really well and will outperform by about 3 or 4k. There are other situations where Xyn's just being really, really tetchy and Grofdar will actually do about the same. So it's your choice entirely. This one definitely for AoE. This one for single target if you've got the option. But failing that, if you just favour Grofdar instead, you can use this all day long and you won't have any trouble. Now the one thing you can do if you want to go that extra mile, you really don't have to because the difference is minimal, is you can change this set, if you have access to trials, to Sororia. You don't have to have the perfected one. You can use the regular set if you want. Just make sure that you've got the Inferno staff and then 3 body pieces or 3 jewelry or whatever order you want it in. But the staff is the only thing you really need to make sure you get correct, and that has to be on the front bar only because the buff carries over. Now this will give you spell damage, max magic, another max magic if it's perfected, not if it isn't. You get minus Slayer as well, increasing all of your damage done by 5%. And when dealing direct damage with a single target ability, which is really easy to do, you actually stack up spell damage with 20 stacks of 300. So it is stronger flat out, spell damage wise, than Burn and Spellweave. But here's 2 things to consider. 1, Burn and Spellweave does have a crit bonus on it, whereas the Sororia set doesn't, so your crit chance will be down. This does fire with 525 spell damage instantly. Although it's got a cooldown, that's 525 flat out. Sororia needs to be kept up and it takes time to build the stacks. So your burst is higher with Burn and Spellweave, especially in fast fights, but this will eventually give you a higher spell damage bonus with no crit, and it can fall off if you mess it up. So for safety's sake, you want Burn and Spellweave. If you are very, very optimized, you know exactly what you're doing in mechanics, you can keep Sororia up all the time, which is very unlikely, then of course you can use this instead. However, flat out in all testing so far, both of them can actually hit almost the same numbers, even on that dummy. So the choice is yours. If you want to go for Sororia, you can. Failing that, you can go literally full out dungeon. Burn and Spellweave, Destruction Mastery, and Xyn or Grofdar. Everything is 4-man content except for the Maelstrom Arena stuff. Oh, traits, by the way. Bloodthirsty on all 3 with spell damage. Divines on everything else. Precise on the front, infused on the back. Now, I'm going to go into champion points, then I'm going to explain the rotation. So, the red stuff you can change as much as you want. Depends on the content you're in, of course, because some things warrant you to swap out your physical resistance to your spell resistance and vice versa. It depends. But flat out, for most content, I stick to this setup. 72 in Ironclad to reduce the amount of direct damage you take. 64 and 64 in here to flat out give you a 13% reduction to all damage types. 51 points into here to give you a 19% reduction to dot damage. Also, Unchained is very important. If we do break free, and we will be doing that a lot in content, your next stamina ability within 5 seconds will be 80% cheaper. We're using one ability. We're using Beast Trap. This will get the cost down if we have to break free. 19 points in Quick Recovery to give us our Healing Receive bonus, which means any heal that we do or other people do for us will actually be stronger. And you've got the Field Physician passive for having 10 points in this tree, of course, which means if you resurrect somebody or while you're resurrecting them, you will actually take less damage. 44 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 in Tenacity and Arcanus to give us more back from our heavy attacks and, of course, increased recovery. 72 to reduce the cost of dodge roll. We don't have a lot of stamina. We do want to get the cost down. And we've got 4 points left, so I'll put them into block cost. We can't really benefit here for 4 points for anything else, not really. So we've just spent them here so we can take advantage of the Treasure Hunter passive. And if you're farming that Burn and Spellweave stuff, you might need this. 61 points into Elfborn to increase all of our critical damage by 21%. This flat out with our bonuses and our buffs applied and with our Mundustone actually make us hit 100% crit damage on the nose. 56 into Elemental Expert to increase all of our damage that we're doing, except for our Beast Trap. Everything else is contributing towards this. 9 points in Spell Erosion to give us that extra penetration so that we can actually hit cap if we have all buffs and bonuses applied. If you are way over, for whatever reason, if you've got different traits or whatever, then you can obviously dump these and put them elsewhere, but here they're just fine. 3 points into Staff Expert to increase our light and heavy attacks, and 66 into Master Arms to increase all of our direct. Just bear in mind our lights and heavies are direct anyway, so this does buff them slightly, but this buffs them also, as well as buffing the rest of our direct, so that's actually very, very helpful. 75 into Thaumaturge, of course, to unlock a passive. This does contribute to our damage over time. Of course, damage over time got reduced, but DKs actually do excel at that anyway, so it does make us do a lot more, but we want it for this. The Exploiter passive, of course, enemies will be off balance in content, and when they are, you will do 10% more damage to them. That's very, very important. And just bear in mind, of course, if anything is off balance, that's your cue to get in a heavy attack, because you'll get double resources back, and you'll do 70% increase of that heavy attack. So sometimes you might want to just slow down a little bit and get some resources back. Don't run completely dry before you do that, though. If you start getting below half and you think you're going to really, really struggle and you haven't quite calculated your rotation properly, you might want to squeeze one in. Now, rotation is actually very, very simple. Now, you need to keep your beast trap down all the time. You need your eruption down all the time. You need your flames up all the time. And you need your wall down all the time. That's pretty straightforward. So, what we'll do in order is we'll do eruption, light attack, flames of oblivion, light attack, beast trap, light attack, wall, swap. Now, that happens every second rotation. Every first rotation, you do it exactly the same, but you miss out the eruption. Don't cast it. So that rotation would literally be light attack, flames of oblivion, light attack, beast trap, light attack, wall, swap. Come around again, do exactly the same, but start with eruption. Flames, trap, wall, swap. Come back again, no eruption. Always use eruption every second rotation, not every rotation, otherwise you will run out of juice rapidly, and this will just overextend and there's no need to. Front bar rotation is quite simple. You'll have Burning Embers, and then you'll have your whip ready by that point. So you'll cast it. Then 3 chains with light attacks. 1, 2, 3. Your whip will be ready again. Light attack, breath, swap. So to recap, light attack, Burning Embers, light attack, whip, light attack, chains 3 times. Notice they're free. Light attack, whip, light attack, breath, swap. Now, why have we done it in that order? So we'll start from the very beginning. When you start a fight, you want to make sure that your Flames of Oblivion is already running, so you can get 3 stacks of Seething Fury if you can help it, or at least 2. So we'll have 1 running, have another. Beast Trap, wall, swap. Seething Fury hasn't run out. Now it's at 3. There's your whip. 1, 2, 3, whip. Breath is 1. Flames is 2. Beast Trap, wall, swap. Embers is 3. There's your whip. 1, 2, 3. Whip again. Breath is 1. Flames is 2. Embers is 3. There's your whip. You cannot fail it. Every single time you use that whip, it's a guaranteed 33% increase if you stick to this rotation. And as you can see, even without Ellie Drain or anything like that running at the moment, I can't actually run out, and that's without me using this. You can have infinite sustain without any extra recovery bonuses, because your building block towards your strong whip is a free spammable. Your first one may pull the target in, but he's CC'd now, so the next 2 are free anyway. Make sure you take those synergies. Make sure you take your potions as soon as possible, and if you do struggle, make sure you squeeze in a heavy attack as and when you need to. The only one thing I would change in the rotation ever is on the rotation that you drop your banner. Make sure that instead of doing 1 whip, then 3 chains, and then a whip again, you can actually just do 5 whips. But be very careful with that. For 2 reasons. 1, your sustain will suffer. 2, your average whips are much, much lower than your Seething Fury whip. So, although you will average out a slight amount of increase to damage, you won't be able to maintain it. So, it is honestly your choice. For the most part, you can actually just keep doing this. As you can see on the screenshot, let's sit on 78k. This can get 80 to 81 all day long with no trouble whatsoever. The reason it's 78 and not 80 is because, unfortunately, the NA transfer of PTS is laggy as hell. And when you're doing a full rotation on this thing, sometimes your firing abilities, it's costing you, but it won't actually fire. So some of the rotations were very, very hard to pull off on the PTS itself, but on the live server, it hasn't been an issue at all. It's been absolutely fine. It's just when they do the NA transfers, I tend to struggle. Probably my location. But anyway, hopefully that was somewhat useful. So, just bear in mind again, you don't need any trial loot whatsoever. You can do Vet, Vault of Madness for the helmet, if you get Groftar, and you can do normal DSA and normal City of Ash. Very, very quick to get hold of that stuff, as long as luck is on your side. Anyway, first of all, thank you all very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. If you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website, XynodeGaming.com. Just bear in mind, of course, by the way, if you are currently watching this on the date it's actually released, the website is currently under construction, moving domains from one place to another. So if you're on the 25th of November for you now, you may have to wait until the 1st of December before you can see it. But anytime after then, the website's up and running. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.